Welcome to the 30-second drill, where we know when there's too many people on the field. I have made an enormous comeback on Shane to make the count 94 to 91, but I'm sure I'll stuff it up this week like I do every other week. Must be a Josh thing. How are you going, mate?
Going well, thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, really good. I just thought before I get into this week's overreactions, in 2 weeks' time, we're running a top 10 quarterback and top 10 teams podcast for all our fan out there. So this week's overreactions. The following teams should sack their coaches and approach Jim Harbaugh while he's mad. New England, the Chargers, and Buffalo. And the other overreaction, I'll throw this out there, the Bengals are going to miss the playoffs.
I agree with the first take. The second one is rubbish. Bengals going to make it.
You are rubbish, mate.
Yeah.
Let's get straight into it.
But I will miss the playoffs. Bengals will not.
We'll go to the Bengals at the Ravens. The Bengals are now 5-4. The Ravens 7-3. The Bengals just lost to the Texans 30-27, while the Ravens lost to the Browns 33-31. Take it away, Shane.
So I think both teams overlooked their opponents from last week, just ahead of this matchup. Burrow had two uncharacteristic interceptions, which I think he'll fix up this week. And even though they were outplayed for the majority of the game, if Boyd could make a routine catch, they would have won the game. Defense gave up about 550 yards, so that'll have to tighten up this week. The Ravens, was a massive capitulation against the Browns, up 24-9 in the second half. Lamar threw two picks, one of them was a pick six, and he only completed 13 passes. So I'm not going to say this team peaked too early, but that was not a good game. I'm taking the Bengals.
The worrying sign for me in this game was Joe Burrow didn't seem his normal clutch self when he was needed to be. He nearly threw a pick on the final, I believe it was his final drive. He threw a pillowy ball to the end zone that resembled something straight out of New England, and then had a strange run on, I think, 2nd and goal, I believe it was. Maybe we need to believe what they're putting out is who they are. As for the Ravens, I said an upset wouldn't surprise me here. You can say that about any game, though, if you really want to. If the Ravens looked ahead, but from the position they were in, they have to be much better. It was a horrible showing, but I think they beat the Bengals. I'm taking the Ravens. So we'll move on to the Bears at the Lions. The Bears are 3-7, the Lions 7-2. The Bears coming off a win 16-13 over the Panthers in what some say was a game that I didn't watch. The Lions coming off a win 41-38 against the Chargers. So for the Bears, the last two games are against the Packers and the Falcons. So just don't watch until the last two games, Bears fans. It'll save you. For the Lions, for me, this team is the best unit in the NFL. The best collective team. They seem like they're playing with and for each other. Dan Campbell knew they couldn't stop Herbert, and we all know the only person who stops Herbert is Staley. So he goes for it on 4th and 1 to make sure he gets the walk-off field goal. He knows his team and they believe in each other and him. I think they can take the NFC. I'm picking the Lions.
Well said. Most sense you've made in the 11 weeks of the show. So, Bears.
Time I was due.
Well done on the win. It's going to be your last one for a month, basically just reiterating what you said. Lions, it should not have been this close against the Chargers. The extra rest, no turnovers, and it still required a walk-off field goal. But you've got to take those wins. The run game looks unstoppable at times, and St. Brown is tied for the most 100-yard receiving games in the NFL this year. So it's time he starts being put in the elite wide receiver conversation. I'm expecting a massive blowout by Australia's team, taking the Lions.
I apologise for not introducing them as Australia's team. That was a very big oversight by me. But I made sense for once, so let's just go with that. We'll take little wins.
It's my thing. Stop stealing it.
Moving on to the Steelers at the Browns. The Steelers coming off a 23-19 win over the Packers to move to 6-3, and the Browns coming off that 33-31 win over the Ravens to move to 6-3 as well. Over to you, mate.
Thanks. Steelers keep getting outgained. They keep finding ways to win. 6-3 in a game off first place in the division. The Pittsburgh defense will have to show up this week as the offense cannot move the ball in the air. But they did win the week 2 matchup against the Browns, so we'll see if they can back that up. Browns, impressive comeback, showed a lot of fight and character. Deshaun Watson was insipid in the first half, but to his credit, played almost perfectly in the second. I'm taking the Browns only because I don't think the Steelers' offense will be able to move the ball consistently.
So as for the Steelers, they shouldn't have allowed the Packers to get that close. We know what's holding them back, but Pickett is better than Trubisky. I anticipate that this will come down to who has the better quarterback. And as much as I do not like Deshaun the person, he is much better than Pickett. For the Browns, with seemingly every MVP favorite having games where they forget how to be a quarterback, could this be the year a defensive player wins it? They're not going to give it to Deshaun no matter what happens in Cleveland, but could Myles Garrett win it? I'm taking the Browns for this one. We are moving on to the Cardinals at the Texans. The Cardinals coming off a 25-23 win over the Falcons to move to 2-8, and the Texans coming off that 30-27 win over the Bengals to move to 5-4. And the Cardinals are interesting. Kyler Murray reminding people how good he is. He's not going to let this team draft a replacement, but they're going to lose this game. Shane, you sent me a meme or something that CJ Stroud is who we think Trevor Lawrence is, and I have to agree. Just on those two, Stroud has 500 plus more yards, 6 more touchdowns, 4 less picks, and has thrown it only 18 more times. An early pickup from Shane, and I immediately jumped on the bandwagon, so I'm saying it now. CJ Stroud is the 30-second drills guy. You're welcome. I'm taking the Texans.
I can jump on board for that. Might have to get a little CJ Stroud, one of these next to the Burrow one.
Bubble. That's a good one. I've started your timer too early, mate.
No,
I'll
don't worry
start
about
it again.
It's fine.
Okay.
Cardinals. As you said, it was great to see Kyler Murray back coming off the ACL, and he's still as elusive as ever and still look like the fastest guy on the field. So, yeah, they're fun to watch, and they could upset a few teams down the stretch. Texans, was another 350-yard performance by Stroud. Offensive Rookie of the Year is wrapped up, and a few good games away from maybe being in the actual MVP conversation. Only one game behind Jacksonville in the division, and I think they can catch them sooner rather than later. I am taking the Texans.
We are moving on to the Titans at the Jags. The Titans coming off a 20-6 loss to the Buccaneers to move to 3-6, while the Jags coming off getting slammed by the 49ers 34-3, and they are 6-3. Over to you, Shane.
Titans offense could not get going at all last week, and they're going to struggle again this week. It's a good opportunity for Levis to get a look at the Jags defense, as he's going to be facing him twice a year for the next 10 years. Jags, that was the worst performance of the year from them. Lawrence had his worst game as a pro. The Jags got an up-close look of how a Super Bowl caliber team plays on every single down. They just got manhandled, absolutely destroyed. They need a big bounce-back game, and I think the Jags will get it this time. Taking the Jags.
If I sing the praises of a quarterback this season, they really turn up the following week and they just play great. It's enjoyable. The Titans had a shocker. They've had a few this year. I would have picked them if they weren't coming up against the Jags after that loss, because I would expect them to bounce back from that. But I expect the Jags to be much better. What the crap was that for the Jags? I need to take a look at myself and my picks to win things, I think. Maybe this is life for teams going up against Chase and Bosa. But I think they've had a shocker here. They have the Texans, Bengals, Browns, Ravens after this, and we're about to find out how good they really are. I'm picking the Jags. We are moving on to the Dolphins at the Raiders. The Dolphins coming off the bye, and the Raiders coming off a 16-12 win over the Jets. The Dolphins are 6-3, and the Raiders are 5-5. The Dolphins beat teams that are 500 and under, yeah? So they win this. Then they win against the Jets, the Commanders, Titans, and the Jets again. And then they lose to the Cowboys and Ravens before putting the Bills out of their misery. And they finish 12-5 and top the AFC East. And they'll lose first week of playoffs. As for the Raiders are equal with the Bills and ahead of the Chargers. Usually that's down to coaching, but I'm not going to give McDaniels a damn thing here. So let's see what the Raiders can do against the Dolphins, as the Jets are just bleh. I'm picking the Dolphins.
So, as you said, Germany. Dolphins are coming off the bye, which was a trip to Germany previous week. But they have to start playing consistent football and beat a top-tier side. But unfortunately for them, they don't actually have to play a top-tier side until Christmas. So they'll stack wins, as you said, over the next 5 weeks. The Raiders, and again, as you said, somehow they're at 500. And I don't understand how, but they are. And they're only a win off the wildcard spot. They're undefeated since McDaniel got sacked. That says a lot about him, but that's going to end this week. Taking the Dolphins.
The Cowboys at the Panthers. The Cowboys smashed the Giants 49-17 to move to 6-3, and the Panthers lost to the Bears 16-13 and a 1-8. Over to you, mate.
So once again, this team is the best team in the league against bad teams. Dak is having his best year as a passer and could put up another 5 touchdowns this week. Cowboys need to establish a strong run game in the red zone because they'll need it against the Seahawks, Eagles, maybe the Bills, Dolphins, and the Lions, who are still left on their fixture. The Panthers, I did not like the way that Frank Reich coached the end of that game. Give your rookie quarterback a chance to gain some confidence, pick up a 4th down, and go win the game, rather than settle for a 59-yard field goal at Soldier Field. He'd already converted 2 4th downs on that drive. Give him the chance to do it again and win the game. Taking the Cowboys.
I'll do this for our Cowboy fan in the audience. Also, maybe our only fan.
Hey, Chris.
They'll finish 9-8 or 8-9. 9-8 if they beat the Commanders twice, which I doubt they will. They have the Panthers and Commanders, followed by Seahawks, Eagles, Bills, Dolphins, Lions. They might beat the Bills. They're a good side, but the improvement they need is where they can't improve, which is that quarterback. I'm glad you watched the Panthers and the Bills. What a shocking predicament they're in. They traded up to get Bryce Young and could be the front runner for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is being touted as a generational talent, the likes you rarely see, in case anyone was wondering why we keep banging on about him. Seemed like a good time to point that out so I don't actually have to talk about the Panthers. I'm taking the Cowboys. Moving on to the Chargers at the Packers. The Chargers losing to Australia's team, the Detroit Lions, 41-38, moving to 4-5, and the Packers losing to the Steelers, 23-19, to move to 3-6. I loved Herbert from just before he was drafted, and I was really excited to see him play, but it's hard to watch him now with that horrendous coach. He, as in Staley, is awful. He has the most expensive defense, is a defensive coach, and can't stop anyone. Sack him and see if Kellen Moore is the guy. As for the Packers, they're going to draft the quarterback, but I hope they don't because it would be so entertaining if they don't. I'm taking the Chargers.
Just going to reiterate a few of the things that you said about Herbert. Look, apart from the early interception, he looked unstoppable against Australia's team. And any quarterback that scores 38 at home, you have to be unlucky to lose, especially when you have a defensive head coach. So the time has come. Actually, the time was over a year ago. You have to find Herbert a new head coach, get him an offensive guy, or just someone better than Staley, which as long as you don't go to McDaniels, shouldn't be hard to find. The guy appears to be coachable. He's unbelievably talented, and he's carrying this team without 2 of his wide receivers who are out. Big shout out to Keenan Allen, who I think had like 180 yards. Packers signed Love to a long-term contract. I'm taking the Chargers.
On to the Giants at the Commanders. The Giants coming off another great performance, losing to the Cowboys 49-17. They're 2-8. And the Commanders losing to the Seahawks 29-26. They are 4-6. Over to you, dude.
The Giants, this is the worst team I've ever seen, including the 0-16 Lions before they were Australia's team, and the 0-16 Browns. They can't move the ball. Defense can't stop the opposition. And as long as DeVito is under center, the Giants will not win a game. The Commanders, I believe they had the better quarterback on the field last week. Howe played really well. And look, they're only two games out of the wild card. I don't think they'll bridge that gap as they've still got the Dolphins, 49ers, and Cowboys twice to play. But I'm taking the Commanders in this one.
I'm not going to start the timer because this will be quick. Giants, I wouldn't mind seeing Caleb Williams under Brian Dable. As for the Commanders, what Hale is doing is actually really impressive. He's leading the league in yards, has a completion percentage of 66.7, and has been sacked 47 times. And the next closest is Zach Wilson, who sucks on 33. I'm taking the Commanders. On to the Buccaneers at the 49ers. The Buccaneers beating the Titans 20-6, moving to 4-5, and the 49ers smashing the Jags 34-3 and moving to 6-3. As for the Buccaneers, Baker survives, but he's going to get destroyed this week. And when I say survives, just maintains the starting spot. As for the 49ers, they absolutely dominated the Jags and needed to for their own confidence. The 49ers hit the quarterback 10 times for 5 sacks, and I think they'll do more than that this week. I'm taking the 49ers by a long way.
If the Bucs do win the division, or whoever wins the NFC South, who do you reckon they'd rather play? Because you're going to get either Seattle, Dallas, Philly, or Minnesota. One of them are going to win 10 or 11 games and get that 5th seed, because it's not what you want. It's going to be a quick exit for the NFC South team. Baker ended the 4-game losing streak. He kept the chances alive in that terrible division. He looked good, and Evans had 143 yards and a TD. So, big game by him. 49ers, if there was any doubt about this team, that was short-lived. The most dominant performance in a long time on both sides of the ball. Unfortunately, McCaffrey's touchdown streak ended at a pathetic 17 games in a row, and he could only tie the record. Purdy absolutely outplayed Lawrence, and it was not close. Taking the 49ers.
On to the Jets at the Bills. The Jets losing to the Raiders 16-12 and a 4-5. The Bills losing to the Broncos 24-22, and they are 5-5. You're up.
Who will throw the dumbest interception this week? Josh Allen or Zach Wilson? Pick one. Who's going to throw
Josh
it?
Allen.
No.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, I agree. It's so hard to watch the Jets at times this year. They've lost games where their opponent has scored 15, 16, and 23. It could be so much better if they had a competent QB. Bills, absolute panic stations. Diggs wants out. The OC is out. The head coach might be out soon. And the QB, I've never seen a player hit such highs and then fluctuate to such lows from drive to drive. They lose this week, and the season is done, and that is not an overreaction. Taking the Bills.
Drive to drive. It's pass to pass, mate. Persisting with Zach Wilson could cost Robert Saleh his job, which would really sum up the Jets because he seems like a really good coach. As for the Bills, Colin Cowherd says A coaches hire A's, B coaches hire C's. I think McDermott's a B or a C and don't anticipate any improvement from this side no matter who they put in an offensive coordinator. Blaming the offense and sacking the coordinator for this side's struggles is laughable. It's the head coach. It's all on him. And you're spot on about Josh Allen. I'm taking the Jets because why not? On to the Seahawks at the Rams. The Seahawks coming off the 29-26 win over the Commanders to move to 6-3. The Rams coming off the bye and they're sitting at 3-6. For the Seahawks, they're a quality team who keep carving out wins. This week's not going to be any different. Quality coaching, quality side, but they're not going to win their division, which will hurt them. And I think they'll struggle with the playoffs. As for the Rams, if Stafford plays, this game's interesting. If Carson Wentz plays, I'm probably tuning in for the hilarity because I can assume it's just going to be like watching Josh Allen and Zach Wilson play. Just pick City. I'm taking the Seahawks. Over to you, man.
I'm also going to take the Seahawks in this one. The fact they required a walk-off field goal for the win showed a lot of character. Offense stepped up when it mattered most. Geno protected the ball, and he found 9 different receivers on the weekend. Well-balanced offense, solid run game. As you said, I don't think they're going to win the West, but the 5 seed is a possibility, which means the winner of the NFC South, which is basically a bye. The Rams are coming off the bye, and I'm really hoping Stafford plays just to make this game interesting, because if Wentz plays, he might roll both his ankles on the same play like he did last year. Seahawks.
Moving on to the Vikings at the Broncos, with the Vikings coming off a 27-19 win over the Saints, moving to 6-4, and the Broncos coming off that 24-22 win over the Bills, moving to 4-5. Kick it off, mate.
Vikings are on a 5-game winning streak, and Josh Dobbs is so much fun to watch. The Vikings are not out of the NFC North race just yet either, so they still have to play Australia's team twice. And Hawkinson is in career best form. He's linking up really well with Dobbs. Had 134 yards and a touchdown last week. Broncos, I said 2 weeks ago, you win the turnover battle, you win the game. And they did it again. They've beaten the Chiefs and the Bills in back-to-back games. And the turnaround from week 3 for that 70-20 point loss has been massive. So well done to Sean Payton. And Russell Wilson does not appear to be the problem anymore. I am taking the Vikings in a close one.
The Josh Dobbs story is incredible, but the real question is, can they beat the informed Broncos? Because Sean Payton is fixing Russell Wilson, and they are starting to roll. Can they make the playoffs? I think they beat the Chargers twice, Pats and the Raiders, which means they would need to, at minimum, split Vikings, Texans, Lions, and Browns, which would then give them 10-7, I believe. If I can count, I can. I am taking the Broncos to beat the Vikings in this one, in a close one, as you've said. Now we move on to the final game of the round, Eagles at the Chiefs. Both teams coming off the bye. Eagles sitting at 8-1, Chiefs 7-2. I can't wait for this one. If the Eagles can't defend the pass, they could play the Chiefs into form. The Eagles have a mid-table defense this year and a top 5 offense in terms of points, but they're up against the number 1 defense this week, so I'm taking the Chiefs. I believe the Chiefs are going to get rolling, and we'll see the Mahomes we all know, and the Eagles won't be able to stop him once again. Over to you, man.
I'm going to take the Eagles in this one, just to be different, and because I think they'll win. This is the game of the week, Super Bowl rematch, and potentially a Super Bowl preview for this year. Big win over the Cowboys heading into the bye for the Eagles, and Hurts should be much healthier now, so I expect a few designed runs from him this week. Defensive battle, and I think Eagles will just pip him. Chiefs, they're also off the bye, as you said, but it had a bad loss against the Broncos 2 weeks ago, and I hope the time off was enough to correct the passing game. But they have the Eagles, Raiders, Packers, Bills, Patriots, Raiders, Bengals, Chargers. So apart from this and the Bengals, I don't think they're going to get pushed. So the 1 seed is theirs.
Definitely. Okay. So the teams on the bye are the Falcons, the Colts, the Patriots, and the Saints. And I don't think it's understating this when I say no one is interested in that.
No, not at all. If any 4 of those teams were playing each other, I wouldn't watch it.
I didn't.
Good.
So,
good.
I go for one of them.
Anyway,
that's it for us. Please follow us on all our social platforms, 30 Second Drill, on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Only email us if you're interested in sponsoring us, like Fire. Thank you, Fire, for keeping us warm back in the ye old times.